Thanks for joining us. I'm Andrea Simon. I've put together this presentation to help you adapt to the changing times that are coming out of the pandemic and the economic transformation that's taking place throughout our global economy, and particularly for you and your own organization. I'm a corporate anthropologist. I specialize in helping organizations change. But we're also well-trained Blue Ocean Strategists, and with over 400 workshops and client engagements, we really have become fans of an approach to help you see, feel, and think in new ways. And I say that often because unless you can see it and feel it, you won't trust it to try it. And that's what this presentation is designed to do. So let's begin. The first question I want you to ask yourself, am I ready for change? The human brain is well designed to help you do what you've always done. It's habit-driven, and it really resists change. You've heard about resistors even in your own organization. You decide to do something differently, and people say that's a good idea and resist changing it. I often would say if you want to change, have a crisis or create one. This is a crisis that was unexpected, but it's a perfect opportunity for you to step back and ask yourself some really important questions. I hear this often as you're thinking about these times. Is it a setback and will bounce back? Is that your strategy? If it is, I'm happy. I hope it works for you. It may. They call me a futurist. I'm not sure I can see the future right now any more clearly than you can. But I do know that there are some options to consider when things are changing. And if it does bounce back, you might be ready for it. But ask yourself really important questions. Who is going to be my customer tomorrow? Are they going through the same great transformation that I am? Is the whole ecosystem that we're working in going to be transformed? What is going to be the catalyst for them to come back to us as a solution provider or a product offerer? You know, what's going to happen in the whole conversation that we're having? There are a couple of things I think would be important for you to focus on. The first comes out of this question: who's going to be our customer tomorrow? What are the products and services you're going to need for those clients? How are you finding out about it? How are you collaborating with them to better understand how they're going through their transformation? You know, what is it that you can do to be innovative right now? Not just incredibly incremental in improving what you've always done, but completely rethinking what you've done. The second and equally important is, do you have the talent and the teams ready for the changes that are coming? You may have furloughed people. You may have asked them to work remotely. You may have asked them to do all kinds of things. But as you're thinking about a recovery, what are we asking them to do together? There are two types of folks in organizations. You may be seeing that already. Those who are good deliverers. They really know how to get the job done in the old way that we did it. And then there are creative discoverers. People who are creative problem solvers, understand how to listen and pull together new ideas, aren't feeling risk now, are feeling the kind of excitement that comes from the unknown. And those people are important, or your deliverers may continue to do what they've always delivered to a market that's no longer needing them. Innovative culture. People often call us and say, I've made this acquisition. My CEO wants to really bring them into our culture. And my question is always, well, what is the culture you want them to become part of? Well, I don't really know. Well, what kind of culture do they have? Well, I'm not sure of that either. We use a tool developed at the University of Michigan. It's called the Organizational Culture Assessment Instrument. And we really use it to help people identify, assess their current culture and what they would prefer to be. And I've got some articles written and published on Forbes on this that you can refer to. But the question for you today is, what kind of culture did you have? And what kind of culture would you like to have? Because it may be essential. There are 4 archetypes. One is a very controlling. I work with a bank and I work with a healthcare company where the CEO signed every check. That was really controlling. I work with another company that was so innovative that they needed some type A controllers to begin to get them to get results. They were a very creative, visionary culture. but they needed some controls to be able to pull off some of the ideas and turn them into businesses that worked. Then I worked with one company that was so competitive that all they wanted to do was win, but they hated each other. And then there was the team clan, which is like a family firm, and we've worked with them as well, where everyone has to have consensus around decisions, and often no decisions are made. What type of culture did you have? What kind are you going to need? Because if you're going to be the controlling leader of that company, even if it's a family firm and you've always done that, you may have to create new teams with new talent to become innovators and entrepreneurs. Then there's this whole opportunity coming for cross-industry convergence. All the silos that we had, that was our industry along the whole supply chain, right up to the consumer. Well, maybe this is a time to rethink it and really look across industries. We'll talk about that some more, because one of the most exciting parts about blue ocean thinking is you no longer stay within the industry that you believe you're a part of. You stop going to just the trade shows, even if it's virtual, for those same industries, but you begin to think about what you can pick out from others and build something that adds value innovatively. And that becomes an opportunity even with your competitors. How could you collaborate? If it sounds like I'm suggesting you reverse everything you used to do, I am. There's one more model to think about. What Uber, Airbnb, and others have created is a platform. They no longer produce something you buy. Facebook doesn't produce something. It gives you a platform to connect. Uber doesn't have taxis they own. It connects people who have a car with those who need transportation. Are you a pipeline producing something, or potentially a platform connecting people in a way that could help them innovatively? What you don't want to do is find yourself being a Nokia or BlackBerry or Motorola, a cell phone that was competing with other cell phones to figure out which was the better cell phone. Think about it. They never saw iPhones coming because they didn't think about what else those phones could do innovatively. And they really didn't think how else they could develop apps for them. But you know that an iPhone today, 30% of the photos are taken on an iPhone or an Android device, not on a camera. I'm not even sure why I need a Canon. I'm not even sure what we do with the cell phone because we rarely use the phone. We text. And video games are currently real hot on them. What else could be on there? What else are you not seeing? Nokia didn't see it. What are you missing? Blockbuster is a case study. Everybody refers to what it could have done. It could have bought Netflix twice for not a lot of money. But it was so convinced that wasn't the business they were in that they didn't even see it coming. And then Disney was a late catch up to Netflix, but it's going to try and use that to compensate for what's going on with the Disney centers where people may or may not be coming again, at least close soon. And then there's Sears. Sears had a catalog well before there was an Amazon. It provided a service that was very innovative. And then it became another. And while all the retailers are struggling now, Sears was different. And now it can't go back, but it can't go forward either. And the number of stores that are closing their retail outlets, the malls are going to be struggling. This is a transformation time when how we shop is going to be very different. And sales are plummeting because the way we did shop is not only different, but the needs that we have are also being reassessed. Are those signals that are coming to you? This is a favorite story because our healthcare client, do a lot of work in healthcare, our healthcare client came to us in a weekend. We put together all the marketing and information to convert their telemedicine app into a home run for them. Customers' patients needed to see doctors, but they didn't want them to come in and expose them potentially to the coronavirus. Our own doctor's office had to shut down because one of the doctors got coronavirus. And when they had it, everybody else had to be quarantined and the whole office had to be disinfected. But telemedicine offers you an opportunity that came really, it's been coming for a long time, but doctors resisted. I have a colleague named Carl Clark, converted his entire mental health centers in Denver to telemedicine in a day, and it worked. and CMS is paying them for the care they're delivering. Think about how fast we can change when we have a crisis, how slow it is when we don't, and it works. Why do we resist? Then we have the education of our future. We've had many colleges and universities as Blue Ocean Strategy clients. They are discovering that only 20% of the student body in the future is going to be traditional students. A friend of mine who's president of a university, he would tell you that the folks on the left were the typical college students. Now he turned it all into a tele college, and he's not quite sure what he's going to do with the space that he has on his campus, but it is going to be transformed. All the resisting faculty have become endorsers of this. They're learning how to do it. He's even hiring someone to come and teach them how to do teleeducation. Other colleges and universities were already facing an uncertain future. They need to reopen themselves to think about not just the classic student, but everyone else who's going to need to be reskilled. The one in the middle is doing now work at home. I love the kids. Homeschooling has been going on for quite a long time. Parents now are discovering, what are we doing in school? What can we do at home? My granddaughter gets up at 7:30 in the morning to get all of her schoolwork done before the day begins, so then she can do other things. And she has a lot of fun doing other things. But my daughter, who's a teacher, is wondering, what are we doing in our schools? How are we using our time and our space? Everybody's asking good questions. How about how we work? This was already coming. The lack of talented workforce was causing people to get flexible, offer it as benefits, let men and women work at home or remotely. And they were wondering how to build a culture. Now they're wondering how to do everything in a remote workforce and for how long. Well, what will I do my space? How will I protect people when they come back? Everything is asking us another question about change. How shall we proceed? And it isn't easy to be a remote worker either. Now the question is the changes that are coming, how do we adapt to them? Now, how do we live? I was listening to a story by somebody the other day who I know, who was telling me how her mother, who's 85, is now alone and has a computer, but that computer doesn't do Zoom. It's a computer for older people. So her daughter had to show her on her iPhone how to use Zoom so she could stay in touch with her family. And then how to hold the camera, how to hold the iPhone up enough so she could actually use it to connect. A whole new set of skills, but an exciting one as everything is changing. Now go back to that question of who's going to be your future customer. It could be a homeschooling mom, a stay-at-home mom and dad, a dad who's now a teleworker. It could be now boomers. Boomers had 67% of the companies in the US before this pandemic. Many of them were thinking about how to value their companies, sell it, pass it on, have a succession plan, big questions. Not necessarily investing in new technology, but really asking questions about what the next stage was in their lives. But many boomers found their retirement dissipated by the market. It may come back. But if they are your customers as business owners, they're going to be asking you different questions. The question often may be, how do I continue to do business differently? How can I reduce my costs, improve my efficiencies? Maybe these will be your clients tomorrow. Gen Ys, Gen Xs. These are important people who are 50% of our workforce. This is a time at which they are working remotely. Are you managing their hands or their minds? Are we doing billable hours still, or are we thinking about how their smarts can help us do better? It's going to be an interesting time for them to be your clients as well as your employees. Perhaps you're working with women, owners of businesses, or women in the workplace itself. Before the pandemic, over 40% of the US businesses were owned by women. Some were necessity businesses, but others were really growing well over the $1 million mark into the mid-market. We're not sure what will follow now, but we do know that women build different kinds of businesses. I just finished my second book. It's about how women do just that. And they will tell you that they collaborate, they coordinate, they're creative problem solvers, they build communities and social networks differently. How are you thinking about them as your customer? And then, of course, is the 18, 17, 16, 15-year-olds who are coming up next. Colleges are beginning to see them in great numbers, but they also have an 8-second attention span. They spend 3 hours on computers doing video games, not work. And they are perfectly happy working remotely, and they are having all kinds of new ways of getting things done. How are you going to think about them if they're your purchaser, your consumer, your customer? What's happening among all of them and you? And don't forget that the fourth industrial revolution was already on its way. I love this chart. It's all about being connected. Remote workers weren't disappointing, but it's also about AI, IoT. It's about a blockchain. It's about how we can streamline things using technology, robots. It's transforming us anyway. Are you paying attention? Were you? The third was computing. The second was electricity. The first was the steam engine. This has all happened in 200 years. What's going to be your take on the fourth industrial revolution? One of our clients said to us, I can finally do the things I've always wanted to do. They never wanted me to fire so-and-so, change this. I'm not going to do that. It's a time to really rethink what is coming. All of it was coming. Remember, homeschooling was already here. Remote workers were already growing in numbers. Decentralized workforces were important for global as well as local. The changes coming with the elderly were coming, but they're coming for ourselves as well. The boomers are booming. Were you resisting the changes or embracing them? Are you thinking strategically about how am I going to rethink my business for the next generation that's coming? So maybe it's time for a new strategy. The strategy of the past, built often on very good foundation, was that you took a segment of this market you were in, and that was your segment, and you competed with others. You worked on your production, on streamlining, on Lean Six Sigma to get your profitability better. You worked on customer service and the customer experience. Is that the right strategic initiatives for the next phase? We often work with clients and they're proud of their customer service, their quality, but they were another. And being another today isn't going to take you into the future. Instead, you want to think about how I can be the only or the best of the rest, or perhaps a leader in, and it requires a rethinking of your strategy, a real one. Now, the way your brain works is it takes what the data is and it makes a story about it. And once you have that story in your mind, your strategy is your reality. I often say there is no truth but truth. The only truth is there's no truth. I'll say that again. The only truth is there's no truth. There's no reality. Your brain creates one and it selects only those things that conform to it. So we need now a simple story for the future that's going to help you plan and really initiate the changes you're going to need. Now, Blue Ocean thinking came out of the work of W. Chan Kim and Renee Mabon. I met Renee and I became a fan of Blue Ocean thinking when she was speaking at the Harvard Club in 2005 after her book came out. I was in the elevator with her by chance. You know, life has a funny way of introducing you to opportunity when you're not thinking about it. I had read her book. I had a client who wanted to do it. And I said to her, I love your visual. It's very visual. Your Blue Ocean strategy is very anthropological. And she said to me, you should become a Blue Ocean strategist. I said, what's that? She said, I have no idea. Let's make it up. And so she did. And I took her practitioner training. And I've done over 400 workshops, as I mentioned, and I have dozens and dozens of clients globally. And every time we work with a company to help them see, feel, and think in new ways, finding their blue oceans, they have an aha moment. They go, oh, this is often right in front of us. How come I can't see it? So what is your strategy? All strategies ask what customers or markets are we going to serve? I started that by asking you, what's your customer of tomorrow? What distinguishes us? Your business brand, why us? What's our value? Everyone says I add value. How do you add it? By being a good customer service provider or some other way? Are you a little better than the others or very different from them? What processes give us a competitive advantage? It answers the question, really and truly, how do we differentiate ourselves? So when those RFP comes in, we're not just another. We've done it differently. And human, technological, organizational enablers of it are all the folks around us, the technology we use, and how we do it differently. What Renee Mabon and Chan Kim found as they studied 150 companies was that those that thrived, and there were only 15% of them, those that thrived, whether it was Southwest Airlines, Cirque du Soleil, Yellowtail Wine, they had a very different approach to all the rest. What they found was that the rest were very much in a red ocean of competition. What Southwest, Yellowtail, and others did was say, make the competition irrelevant. But if you're thinking about your competition, you're in a very bloody red ocean. You will either win that RFP or that project, or you will lose it. And if you win it, someone else lost it. And you're competing against others all the time for a smaller and smaller share of the market. So if I'm an American customer, I rarely fly Delta. And if someone else is a Delta customer, they rarely fly American. And today, none of us are flying anyone. Should be interesting to see how it comes back. But think about it. If you shop in Nordstrom's or Neiman's, you probably are shopping in Sears or Kmart. And we've segmented the market into these silos and we compete for those same customers. The problem is there's too much supply and not enough demand. So the blood is really deep and the competition very keen. What they found though, among those companies that really thrived, didn't matter the industry, didn't matter the company or what it was doing, it had a different approach. It made the competition irrelevant. They didn't think about the competition. They thought about what do people need and how do I create a leap in value for them and the company. It's both sides. So they were really thinking a little like Uber. How do I open a new market space? There's lots of literature on Wawa and how Wawa, this wonderful convenience gas station, realized that they were a commodity. People could get gas anywhere. But what people really needed was an easy place to get good food fast. And not a McDonald's or 7-Eleven, good food fast. They outsell 7-Elevens, McDonald's, and all the other fast food places and get far better profits because they have no sit down and no drive up through Wawa. It's a great blue ocean. And they followed the process to really think about what it was that their customers needed. There are 5 things we focus on. The first is, how do I add value innovatively? Wawa said they need food fast that's good food and change the whole model. You go after non-users. Who could be using you? Why aren't they? I'll tell you a couple of stories about clients of ours in a moment, but think about who's coming in through your emails or your telephone that you say, we don't do that. Why not? There was a wonderful person out on the West Coast who has big warehouses with refrigeration in them. And he went back after one of our workshops and asked his folks, who could use us that isn't? And they said, well, we only deal with the large producers of food out here in California. We could deal with all the smaller ones, but we don't. We don't do that. He said, well, let's try. Go out to them, raise the price so it's of better value to us. See how we can help them, make it a streamlined process for them, and let's see what happens. So I saw him again at another workshop I was doing. I often do follow-ups to them. And he said, oh my gosh, they are our most profitable customers. They're our growth engine. And they were all coming and asking, and we said, we don't do that. What are you not doing that could open up a new market for you? Unmet needs. Another little story. There was a gentleman from Ohio who came to a workshop I was doing in Chicago. And he came because he sold a patented product for insulating houses and other facilities. And he gone out with his sales guys to watch them sell. He was listening to my talk, and at the break, he said, oh my gosh. I get a lot of oh my goshes. I was out with my sales guys. The client was going to buy the product we were selling, but that's not what he was interested in. He kept asking me, what if? Could you? Have you thought about? Why don't you? And I never heard any of those questions. In fact, I could have done all those things. And that's where the real revenue opportunities were. He went back to Ohio and created the what if sales process for his whole organization. It's interesting. You need a little aha moment around things that are right in front of you, but you're paying no attention to. The fourth point is create demand. His what if sales process was going to find a way to create demand for the what ifs. You know, the guy with the warehouses was going out and saying, have you thought about, we could if. You have to create demand innovatively, not simply by doing the same thing you've always done. And how do you make the competition totally irrelevant? If nothing else from today, you don't know what your competitors are going to do. Try not to focus on them. Try to focus on what your customer of tomorrow needs, both today and in the future. Some things to think about as you're thinking about them. Ask them, how do I make it easier for you to get your job done? How do I make it more productive so that you can do better and I can as well? More fun and adventure. Why not? Simple. Take the complexity out. What are you investing in that people aren't using? Engineers often have a great time making the very best, but why is that relevant? Simple sells. People need simple solutions faster and easier. You can always do add-ons, but why? And solve a big problem in an innovative way. Your turn to be the innovator. I love my visual. Remember I said you have to see it? Think about whether you want to be on the red or the blue ocean. Neither is simple or easy. On the red side, you know how bloody it is. I had one client lost his biggest customer. They wanted something completely different. He was a battery manufacturer. He's a chapter in my book. And his biggest client left to go somewhere for rechargeables. Now, rechargeables were becoming very important in the market. And he said, we don't do that. He found out quickly he had to. And we helped him reinvent himself. But it's an interesting opportunity for you to think about those customers, the competition, and how bloody it is. The blue ocean is unfamiliar. We often say, make the unfamiliar familiar. That's where the opportunities are. Just because it's unfamiliar, don't fly away from it. Your brain doesn't like it, but you may love it soon. 3 cases, and then I'll go into the how do we do this. Leclee Chain is in St. Louis. Great client of ours, a chapter in a book as well. Jim Riley was at a meeting at a Vistage organization membership meeting that I was talking at. I do a lot of Vistage work and I love the organization. He left and went back to his office and sat on the telephone. And every time we see him out in St. Louis, and we go out often, we laugh about, it was right there. He listened while his customer service person kept saying to the people calling, oh, I'm sorry, we don't do that. No, I'm sorry, I don't know who does that. Finally, he said to her, how come you keep telling them we don't do that? She said, because you told me we don't do that. He said, I can do all of that. And then he grew 40% on what people were asking for. He made chain for snow tires. Now he makes lots and lots of different kinds of chain, innovative, small, strong, all kinds. What do people need? Even made in the USA, because he brought his factory back from China, opened it up in Mississippi, and makes USA made chain. What can he teach you? And I know he would love to. The second one is Aldridge. Aldridge has a recent client in a wonderful company. They are an IT outsourced solution provider. They'll take all your IT problems and take care of them for you. They had stalled. New customers weren't coming in the way they had been. So we went exploring with them and we listened to their current customers and prospective ones. And what we heard were all kinds of things that Aldridge could do, but said, no, that's not our core business. Once you get locked into your core business, it gives you focus. And in an expanding market, that might be just fine. But when all of a sudden the market begins to slow down and there's lots of competition, and they were very much in a red ocean, they looked and acted just like others, just like them, smaller and bigger. But what we heard from their customers were all kinds of new ideas. Everything from a 360 really cybersecurity to prevent people from phishing and ransomware. One of their new clients had had a ransomware attack and were coming because their current IT provider couldn't help them. Another one had a whole new scanning system for their warehouse and needed somebody to set up all of the IT around it. They could do that. What are we saying? No, we don't do. It sounds like great focus, but maybe the market's moving beyond us. They repositioned themselves, opened a Blue Ocean Strategy, and they were positioned perfectly for the remote workforce because they were already looking at their own remote workforce and the gig economy. What's right in front of us? The last one, LK, is a chapter in my book as well. They had developed filler stations. They won an award for it. It wasn't selling. They were trying to sell it through their current distribution channels to engineers and architects and business owners, and they weren't buying. So we went exploring, and we did a couple of retreats for their management team. What we were hearing was that the people who wanted them were colleges and universities and college students who wanted to stop sales of plastic water bottles. Instead, they wanted refillable bottles. But LK wasn't selling to them. That wasn't their market, or their manufacturer's reps, or their whole supply chain. In fact, their marketing person told me that they had gotten lots and lots of inquiries from students on college campuses who wanted to install them to stop the sale of water bottles. In fact, one of their folks came up with the epiphany themselves. They said, oh my gosh, this isn't about filling the bottle, it's about killing the bottle. And the room went, shh. Everybody said, oh my gosh, we've positioned it wrong. It grew to be 25% of their billion-dollar portfolio, and it still continues to grow. Simple and easy way to fill your bottle and kill the bottle. So what's the process? It's a very visual. I want you to keep visualizing this. Remember I said we want to make it easier, more productive, fun, and adventure, simple? I go back to that just to remind you what we're trying to do. We want a visual awakening. You need to come to terms with what you do and could do. I put this cartoon in because if you're thinking that you're the boat, and you're the land, and the boat's coming to save you, you think one way. If you're on the boat and you see the land and you're going to save yourself that way, you think a different way. I laugh because it isn't the essence of what these are, it's how you perceive them to be and what you value. So I want to help you find a way to get a picture of what you are doing now, to visualize your business and really think about it. Where are you focused and why? The first exercise that I like to take a client through are pioneers, migrators, and settlers. You can do this yourself. Evaluate what you offer today seriously and what its market potential is for the future. Ask yourself, am I an imitator? When I did this recently for a Vistage group, I was really surprised that most of them had products or services that were imitators, settlers, or a little migrator, adding some value, improving it. Very few were pioneers. There was one gentleman in particular who had some pioneer ideas to install in all of his facilities, but he wasn't yet ready to. And the pandemic created a perfect opportunity to do that. Someone else said, I've got a new way of really cleaning the air in warehouses. Nobody's buying, but it's my pioneer. How do I get it out there? I use this often to help them think about it, help you think about it. Think about what Yellowtail did in the wine industry. Yellowtail came in I think 1997, 8, 9, and their wine from Australia failed terribly. It was a $30 bottle of wine. It was competing against 2,500 different brands. Now you have to remember that only 15% of Americans drink wine. And with all those brands competing for the wine drinker, the 85% of Americans who don't drink wine were drinking other things. Beer, hard liquor. I have a friend who never drinks wine, only hard liquor, loves his vodka. Some people drink soda. But Yellowtail came in and actually went with some Blue Ocean folks around the country to see how people actually drank and celebrated. And what do they do at parties? And what they realized was that there was a huge market who were non-wine drinkers who could drink wine if it were simple and easy to buy. They didn't want the complexity. They didn't want to have an educated palate. They didn't want to compare notes about this chateau or that. They wanted something easy to buy. Out comes the color-coded wine. I actually was at a group workshop I was doing, and the woman said to me, yes, I go and I buy a red, an orange, and a yellow, and my parties are covered. And I naively asked her what kind of wine, and she said, I have no idea. It's a red, an orange, and a yellow. Somebody else was telling me the same thing. He had liquor stores. He said the thing that Yellowtail did so well is it didn't make me put their red, orange, and yellow among other Shiraz or Merlots. They didn't fit there. They were a whole different category. So they created boxes, and you see them in this picture, and the boxes stack on each other. So I didn't have to take other wines off the shelves. And my local little liquor store has them right by the cash register. I said, you have a $6.99 bottle of wine by the cash register. Why? He said, he didn't quite say stupid. He said, because it sells. I said, because he had all these other wines in the back. They were all competing for the 15% of us, and Yellowtail was right up front. Do you have a Yellowtail opportunity? Then there are Migrators. These are products that have value but are not necessarily transformative. I like the Just Water bottle. I buy it often when I'm in airports. I don't like to use plastic, and I don't want to fill our landfills with it. But they're really not dramatically transforming the category. They're just adding another option that's a better one for people like myself who care about that. And then there are settlers. There's nothing wrong with a Coke or a Pepsi or a Sprite, but they too are struggling. Demand is flat, and they needed to go into the water industry in big ways, the iced tea one. What else were people drinking besides a Coke or Pepsi? I put this in here so you can think with your team, what do we have? Pioneers, migrators, settlers, for today, for the future? Use the tool to begin to think about visualizing your products for today and what do you have coming out of this recession to see if it will really innovate for you. And then we take you to do a strategic canvas. I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'll give you the tools here to do it as well. And I'm always open to discuss yours with you. It's not hard to do on Zoom, and I love to talk with you. First thing, who's your customer of today? We'll talk about tomorrow's. But the first thing you have to do is map out a picture of today. What are you competing on? Rate your relative offering. I'll show you that in a second. But are you highly invested in quality? Are you highly invested in e-commerce? What are you not invested in at all? Draw an as-is canvas and create the dots for you and your competition. This was what Yellowtail was facing when it was looking at the United States market. It had two categories. The blue was a premium, the red was the budget. The premium was high price, the budget was not. The use of terminology was a big deal for the premium, a little bit better for the budget than their low price. But as you can see, the premium were really heavily invested in all the things that wine lovers really loved. And the budget wasn't so heavily invested. Where they got their wine from, where they got their grapes from, wasn't as important as having a $3 or $4 or $5 bottle. Nobody was focused on making it easy to buy, easy to drink, or fun. Not an issue at all. What is yours? I'll give you this. The first thing to start with is price. Are you high price, mid price, or low price? And on the bottom, what are you competing on? Typically, I find people putting in there quality, service, the talent that we have, training, customer experience, marketing, branding, which usually aren't heavy investments. E-commerce, rarely. It would be a good time to map yours out, put you in, and see what your competition is doing, at least as you can imagine. I had one client, and we did 12 lines of competitors, at which point they realized they didn't know what the competition was competing on. But do it for yourself. And when you do it, begin to ask questions. Are we really that good? Often I find that people are high priced, highly invested, but they don't own the market. And that lower price one that's not investing in it has a bigger market share. Why? Often they're telling the story better. Then when you got that done, begin to test it. You have to go visually exploring. I use Undercover Boss. It's the greatest way to go look at what your staff is doing. But sometimes I spend a day in the life of my customer. When I have a new client, I spend a lot of time hanging out. That's what anthropologists do. We observe, we listen to the stories. Lunch and listens are fun. You can do them remotely. Call your client and say, I want to send you a pizza. We're going to have lunch together. Tell me what you're thinking about. You can't take a camera, but when this is over, take those cameras, those iPhones, take great pictures, or have your client take a picture of a problem they need solved. Listen to the stories. Don't ask them questions. Let them talk. In the storytelling, we begin to reveal our pain and the problems that we're solving or not solving. But listen to the stories. Then begin to think about where you can go look for new ideas. In the red ocean, you stay within your industry. That's the industry we're in. In the blue ocean, we look across them. Don't think about this the way you did before. If you are really good in the HVAC industry, go looking at what robots are doing. Go look at what autonomous vehicles are thinking about. If you are in the, you produce things for ventilators now. What do those ventilators really need as you go forward? It doesn't matter what you're doing. I did a podcast interview with someone who teaches people how to make craft beer. There are 6,500 craft beers. He needs to think how to help them market them or create more beer lovers. It's a really interesting opportunity. Same thing with the strategic group. If you only go over the premium, what could you do if you went over the mass? What about the buyer? Are you like the farmer trying to sell to the doctors or to the end user? It doesn't matter what kind of business you have. It's a good opportunity to rethink it. One of the gentlemen in one of the groups I was working on has a series of family-owned truck stops. And he bought them, and he can see all kinds of ways of improving upon them. But we talked about the truckers themselves and what ideas they could tell you. And that led to the scope of the product or the service offering. What if we had self-serve? What if we had automated delivery? What could we add in terms of new value? One of the universities that I love to work with, they started to talk about not thinking out of the box, but creating a whole new box for businesses, hospitals, healthcare workers, municipalities, a whole new scope of product or service offering, not just for that high school graduate, but for a whole new market. The functional and emotional, if you are serious, what would happen if you had a little fun? And if you are a fun place, maybe it's time for doing something more serious. And time. The trends, ask yourself, those trends are really important. That fourth industrial revolution was already on us. What are we missing? Can AI bots help my accounting firm streamline processes? Is it a time to invest in them? 65% of the accountants today are women. That's a trend. What are you going to do to keep them engaged, help them be home-based workers? What is it that we're going to do? Will we need them? Lots of changes. I put this in here. The more you can concretize this and agree to go do it, the sooner you can begin to listen to their stories and see new ways of doing your own business. What kind of industries are you going to go take a look at? Go call them up. I want to know more about how you do AI. I have a wonderful newsletter that comes to me from the whole service industry. What are they doing? Read different magazines, look for signals. It's not hard online to ask your Google question and see what's the hot topic. There's also future scans. And Jeremy Gooch has 100 major trends going on. Introduce yourself to him. He's a great thought leader, but all of this makes it essential for you to get signals outside of what you're hearing. Now, a little more digging into places to go looking. We often talk about focus on your customers. In the past, that was probably a good idea. Today, I want you to think about non-customers as well. Very scary idea, but it could be exactly what you need at this point. Non-customers, non-users fall into three categories. The first, buy you out of necessity. The second, refuse to use you. And the third, have never thought of you. So this gentleman who had this wonderful HVAC company thought about a non-user. They typically build whole systems in new warehouses. Could they retrofit older ones? And those folks weren't looking for them. Maybe they refused to invest in it, but maybe there was something that could be transformative of the space they had. That could be really a big idea. Are you going to be able to help mall owners reinvent their malls? How could you help retailers rethink what they're doing? E-commerce itself is slow. Will it come back? Well, who knows? And I noticed true that the sales of makeup and cosmetics and hair care are way down. Without places to go, people aren't making up. All of these are asking good questions. Who could be using you in different ways? So think about it. I ask you to visualize it. So I put these images in for the same reason. But give some thought with your team about non-users. Think like Jim Riley. Who's calling and telling me they need something that we say we don't use, we don't do? I had another wonderful client. He's another chapter in my book. They had a patented house wrap, and they said, oh, people don't buy it in the South and Southwest. And I said, why? He said, well, they don't need it. I said, but why? I found 60 emails in 1 month coming from territories where he had no distribution. And his question was really typical. Why? I said, I don't know. Why don't we ask them? And we did, and they needed it. A lot of stucco remediation could use it, but they had found him, and he could distribute it all by himself. What's coming to you already? That's a non-user who could use you. And then you have an abundance of ideas. Often we become really frustrated by the abundance of good ideas. We don't know what to do with them. So the next tool that we have is called the 4-action framework. What can we change to change our focus? What will I eliminate, reduce, raise, and create? Jim Riley decided to eliminate a single focus on chain for snow tires. That may be what the industry is focused on, but I'm not there anymore. I'm a whole new kind of company. I'm going to reduce a single product focus for a single kind of solution. And I am going to raise my interest in what people can use chain for. And I'm going to create something that I have never created. What could you do? You know, Aldrich found the same thing, created a different mindset about who I can serve and how I could do that, and who I don't want to. I put this in here because sometimes you need a place to write on. So how could you shift your focus? How would I reduce it or create it? What am I going to do to shift my focus in a new way so I can draw a to-be strategic canvas? So the last part of our talk is about what do I do now? You're hearing a lot of gaps, pain, and go-arounds. The vision is very clear. I've got to do something. I've got all these ideas. What will I do with them? So we put our ideas together. I did this for Telerex, at the time a division of Merck. I worked with them for a year to rethink their telephone answering systems. And they put all their ideas up on the wall, and the ideas kept growing and growing. And then we began to focus them down. And we began to rethink what they could do in a to-be canvas. Build your own. I'll give you Yellowtails. I'll come back to that in a second. Yellowtails looked like this. They raised their price from the budget, and they eliminated, reduced, and created something completely different. It was a really different wine that was easy to drink, easy to choose, and it was fun and adventure. Its tagline, a great Australian wine that everyone can enjoy every day. This is what I want you to do on this canvas. Does your strategy canvas meet the 3 most important elements of a compelling strategy? Does it diverge from the rest? Does it have a new focus? And do you have a tagline? That's what Yellowtail was able to do. They've sold 1 billion bottles of wine to non-wine drinkers by making it easy and simple. Put yours up and begin to think about, have I really refocused? Now, as I wrap up, think about, can you open a new market space? I love the HVAC company who thought about retrofitting existing warehouses. They may have, in fact, installed the originals. A whole new market for them might be going back and saying, how about improving? Software does it. Can a product as well? Can you see things not there before? Are you beginning to see things that others are saying, oh, that's not important now? Unmet needs? What are the what ifs? If you have a lunch and learn, ask your folks, what if, could I, have you thought of? Non-users are waiting for you. That company on the West Coast that had the warehouses for produce had lots of small producers who needed them. They just needed to change the business model and then go create demand. It's not a bad time to start your marketing, your branding, your e-commerce, all of the stuff that will open up new markets for you, and so you're ready for the resurgence after the recession. Part of this is the way your brain sees. I have a college president who said to me during this period of a really disruption for her whole university, my folks are seeing everything blue. They no longer say, faculty no longer say, oh, we don't. They say, how can we? You will find your mind map also changing. You'll begin to see opportunities. Should you seek them, it will open up all new possibilities that are awaiting for you. Not one, but lots. You're going to find so many, you're going to say, how do I focus on what I can do now? And what's a big wow? And how can I do this someday? But that's for another discussion. Whatever you do, have fun. You might as well. And what we do, we're innovation games trained facilitators and trainers. When we play games with people, they have fun and the ideas come flowing out. Winston Churchill, someone has said he didn't say this. I said, well, maybe he did. After reading The Splendid and the Vile, my hunch is he might have. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. We can help with lots of stuff on our website, and we can always schedule a remote session to help teach you and be your guide. And maybe one day we can even do it in person again. Thanks for joining us. It's truly been a pleasure working with you on this. I hope you have seen a way to create your own blue ocean. I know you're feeling the challenges today, but it's a great opportunity to see you feel and think a new way. And as I tell people, my tagline is to take your observations and turn them into innovations. Bye for now. Enjoy the day.